session, which is Srimad Bhagavatam class. May I know who all have joined the call this morning?
हरे कृष्ण पद्मा माता जी दंडवत प्रणाम शिला प्रभुपाद की जय गुरु महाराज की जय प्रीतिदास जी प्रभु हरे कृष्णा
Preeti Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
जय राधा माधव हरे
Hey, Jai.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Arvind Das from Chicago. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Arvindaksh Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for joining the call, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Gurudev. This is Hari Dada from Fairfax, Virginia. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Radha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Padma Mataji. This is Kaumadi Kedasi from Baltimore. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj and all the devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Kaumadi Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances, Mataji. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Padma Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharajas, and all glories to the assembled devotees. This is Tiffany in Pennsylvania. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Tiffany Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Padma Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Vidita Gandharvika Devidasi from Texas, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vinita Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण माता जी दंडवत प्रणाम प्लीज एक्सेप्ट माय हम्बल obeisances all glories to the Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Gauranga all glories to the assembled devotees Yashamati from Chicago
Hare Krishna, Yashamati Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, and to all the assembled devotees. This is Megha from Naperville. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Megha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Padma Mataji, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajis. My humble obeisances to you and all the devotees. This is Krishna Kumari Devidasi from Rama.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kumari Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Padma Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. This is Radharani Devidasi from Baltimore. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Radharani Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Padma Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all the assembled devotees. This is Indulekha Karna Devidasi from Lincoln.
Hare Krishna, Indulekha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Is anybody who would like to get introduced themselves?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, please go ahead, Mataji.
No, go ahead, Shiromani Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj and the assembled devotees. This is Shiromani from Krishna Kathadesh. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Shiromani Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Padma Mataji Dandavat Pranam Srila Prabhupada ki jai Guru Maharaj ki jai this is Shamaguri Devidasi from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna, Shamaguri Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, all glories to Assembled devotees. This is Mohini Lakshmi from Detroit.
Hare Krishna, Mohini Lakshmi Mataji, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all gurus to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Varsha from Charlotte.
Hare Krishna Varsha Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Do we have? I would like to welcome, I would like to give to Tiffany Mataji for giving brief. Today we are going to, today we are fortunate to have His Grace Madhavananda Prabhuji for enlightening us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 14th chapter and 39th verse. And I would like to introduce, I would like to give it to the Tiffany Mataji for giving brief introduction about Prabhuji about this thing. Mataji, please take over the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Madhavananda Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I'd like to introduce His Grace Madhavananda Prabhu, who is a disciple of His Holiness Gaura Govinda Swami Maharaj. Prabhuji joined ISKCON in 1982, and he served as head pujari and temple president for ISKCON Seattle. First and second initiation he took from his Guru Maharaj in 1993, and he served as a personal assistant to Maharaj in 1994, traveling with him all over and preaching in various countries. Madhavananda Prabhuji is editor-in-chief of Gopalji Publications, which publishes the books of His Holiness Gaur Govinda Maharaj, as well as Krishna Kathamrita magazine and Bindu e-magazine. He is a resident of Bhubaneswar and Puri for the past 2 decades and is very devoted to researching about Jagannath and the culture of Jagannath Puri. Prabhuji has published various magazines on the esoteric secrets of Jagannath Puri, and the book Mathura Meets Vrindavan, produced by Gopalji Publications, won the GBC Award for Outstanding Literary Accomplishment in the year 2000. The Krishna Kathamrita magazine also won the Adharya Award from the World Vaishnava Association. He has traveled to various countries in the world in the past 2 decades for speaking Harikatha on the order of his Guru Maharaj. Welcome to the call, Prabhu. So wonderful to have your association again. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Please take over the call, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for having, enlightening us.
You did really good. Everybody should know that I just joined about 1 second before this began. So you guys did really good. So before we try to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam, my Guru Maharaj told me that we should offer prayers to the Bhagavatam. In Chaitanya Charitamrita it said that Krishna Tulya Bhagavata Vibhu Sarva Shri Prati Shloki Prati Akshri Nanata Koi. That just as Krishna's Vibhu, or the Supreme Personality of God, is so also in the Bhagavatam. Just as we offer prayers to Krishna, we also offer prayers to Srimad Bhagavatam. So my Guru Maharaj instructed me that before I speak on Bhagavatam, I should recite a certain set of prayers, which are his Mangalachana. Actually, let's see. I think if you allow me to share the screen, which you just did, maybe I can pull that up. Just give me 1 second so the devotee is conscious. It takes about 10 minutes, this Mangalachana. Just be patient with me. I'm just looking now. Let's see. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can recite some of these prayers if you know them with me, as you like. Narayanam namaskrityam naram shaivanarottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam dirayat vedi ramayane shaiva purane bharate tata adavante cha madhye cha hari sarvatra giyate mukam karoti vachalam bhangum langayate girim Yat kripa tamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam. This is a traditional song that they sing in Orissa. In Orissa, in the villages, they have what they call a Bhagavat Tungis, which are like a little hut where all the villagers would come together before television. And they would have Bhagavatam every day. And before they would recite Bhagavatam, they would sing this song traditionally. Paramananda he Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vanda Vela Hari Kori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Paraye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Dharma projita kaita vota paramoni matranam satam Vidyam vastava matta vastu shivadam tapatrayun mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamune Krite Kimba Parayishara Sadyo Hridyavarudhyate Trikriti Vishu Shushu Vispakshana Nigamakopa Turo Galitam Palam Shukamukadamitra Dravasam Yutam Pivata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhurahora Sika Bhuvivavuka Anarto Pasamam Sakshad Bhakti Yogam Adhoksaje Lokashajanato Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhitam Yasham Vaishuyamanayam Krishne Paramapurishe Bhakti Utpadyate Pumsa Shoka Moha Bhayapaha Srimad Bhagavatam Puranamamalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramahamsamekamalam Gyanam Param Giyate Tatra Gyana Vairagya Bhakti Sahitam Naiskarmyam Avishkutam Touchtrinvan Supaten Vicharana Paro Bhaktya Vimuchen Naraha Arto Yam Brahma Sutranam Bharatartha Vinirnayaha Gayatri Basharupa So Vedartha Paribrimitaha Sarva Vedeti Hasanam Saram Sadam Samudritam Sarva Vedanta Sadam Hi Srimad Bhagavatam Ishite Tadrasamrita Chipta Shanam Yatra Swadruchi Pachit Krishna Bhakti Rasa Swaru Shri Bhagavatam Tate Veda Shastra Hoite Parama Mahatma Chari Veda Upanishade Jata Kichu Oya Tara Arta Lena Vyasa Purila Sanchaya Jai Sute Jeru Vishaya Vachana Bhagavate Seru Slokini Bandana Jiverani Stada Lagi Sutra Koilo Vyasa Mayavadi Bhashishunile Oya Sarvanasa Jaho Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavera stane ekanta shaikoro Chaitanya charane Bhagavata jainamane Sejavana sama Tada sasa achi janme janme prabhu jama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. Good evening, dear devotees. Good morning, depending on where you're at. So we're reading today from the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, from a chapter entitled The Force of Material Enjoyment. And we're speaking online to a bunch of devotees, but we also have a crowd of devotees here with us. So don't mind if I look around and not just look at the computer screen. It's so nice to see devotees in the flesh. It's a rare thing for us. So this is chapter 14, Force of Material Enjoyment, canto 5. Text number 39. Now this is in prose. It's not a regular shloka with a regular meter, so you'll see how we chant it. Yaidam yogana sasanam na va etad agarundate yanyasta dhanda munaya upasama sila uparatatmanaha samavaya ganchanti. I'm not going to read the word for word, it's a little funny. Just reading a translation. Saintly persons who are friends to all living entities have a peaceful consciousness. They have controlled their senses and minds, and they easily attain the path of liberation, the path back to Godhead. Being unfortunate and attached to the miserable material conditions, a materialistic person cannot associate with them. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The great saint Jud Bharat described both the miserable condition and the means to get out. The only way out of it is association with devotees. And this association is very easy. Although unfortunate people also get this opportunity, due to their great misfortune, they cannot take shelter of pure devotees, and consequently, they continuously suffer. Nonetheless, this Krishna consciousness movement insists that everyone take to this path by adopting the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The preachers of Krishna consciousness go from door to door to inform people how they can be relieved from the miserable conditions of material life. As stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Guru Krishna Prasad He Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. By the mercy of Krishna and Guru, one can get the seed of devotional service. If one is a little intelligent, he can cultivate Krishna consciousness and be free from the material conditions of material life. Gora Graganya Gana Gota Goloruharam Goranga Gudatama Gopyara Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam. So this verse is speaking about the necessity of sadhu sangha. And Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, he says something which may sound a little contradictory. He says that the only way out of this miserable condition is association with devotees, and this association is very easy. And then the next sentence he says, although unfortunate people also get this opportunity, due to their great misfortune, they cannot take shelter of pure devotees, and consequently, they continuously suffer. It seems a little contradictory, isn't it? On one hand, he's saying it's very easy, but on the other hand, there's a lot of people who don't get to do it. Huh? So this is a very wonderful verse. Srila Sridhar Swami, in his Bhavarta Deepika commentary, he gives a very short commentary on this. He says, Anabrito hitam aha yad idam iti. That this is the hetu, speaking about the hetu, the cause, anabrito, why we don't come back to this material world. Association with the devotees is everything. And what kind of devotees? What is a sadhu? There's different types of sadhu. Sadhu, in one sense, just means anyone who has that profession. You may say, who's a banker? Well, anyone who works for a bank, they're a banker, right? But someone's really a banker if they study very diligently, they have a degree in that field, and they understand it very deeply. That person's a real banker. So sadhu can mean different things. So if we say that we should associate with saintly persons, what kind of saintly persons should we associate with? Here is Jad Bharat is saying, Yadidam yoga anusasanam, that this abode of the Lord, this is attained only yoga anusasanam, by connecting with the Lord, which Srila Prabhupada translates as through bhakti, or through devotional service. Nava etat avarundate, it's not obtained. This path of liberation, it's not obtained any other way. How is it attained? We have to approach these persons who are nyasta dandaha. What is nyasta dandaha? Prabhupada translates it as persons who have given up envying others. It's an interesting word, nyasta dandaha, or compound word. Danda means to chastise. Danda also means to raise a stick. And nyasta means when someone who's given that up. So in other words, people who want to raise the stick, they want to chastise everyone. Just like, I knew I should have got my japa mala tonight. In our japa mala, we have this little hole which we keep this finger out of. Why this finger? Why not our thumb? Why not the forefinger? Why not the middle finger? Middle finger is very bad in the West. Why the forefinger? Why this particular finger? In Ayurvedic medicine, this finger is called Bish Angul. Angul means finger. And Bish means poison. This is the poisonous finger. Why? Because this is the finger that I use when I want to criticize the devotees. Say that rascal, Ananta Gauranga Prabhu, he's this and this, and I shake my finger at him. So in our bead bag, when we want to associate with Krishna in the form of the holy name, this Bishangul, this poisonous finger, has no place. He's kicked out. You can't come in. So we want to approach people who are nyasta dandaha, or as Srila Rupa Goswami says in his Upadeshamrita, those persons who are nindadi shunya hidam, whose heart, hrida, is free nindadi shunya. They have no propensity to criticize others whatsoever. That's the standard of a devotee. As Srila Prabhupada writes in Madhulila Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says, the qualification of a Vaishnava is they're adosha darshi. They don't see faults in others. Not what to speak of, speaking about it. They don't see faults in others. My Guru Maharaj once commented on that, and he said that we should be sarva dosha darshi. We should see all the faults in ourselves. But we should be adosha darshi when we deal with others. Unless you have that business, especially unless you're guru. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wrote in one letter, I know it's a popular thing. Some devotees say Srila Prabhupada chastised the rascals and he called them hogs, dogs, animals, monkeys, and this and that. And Arjun, he fought. We should also fight. We should also fight. But until Krishna tells me, Nimitta matram, Bhavesavi Satyana, you're my instrument, then I should fight according to my adhikar, according to my situation. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wrote a letter in this regard to one disciple. He said, I do not know why you're wanting to take up the unpleasant activity, which is my business, of finding fault with your God brothers. That's the business of Guru. My Guru Maharaj spoke about that quite often. He said that we should give up this Guru Abhiman. Bhaktivinoda Thakur once sung, he says, Guru Abhimana Chaji. I give up this mentality that I'm Guru. And I just want to be a disciple of my Guru. So these are persons who are Nyasta Dandaha, who are Muniya. Muniya means a saintly person. A Muni means someone, Mana means the mind. They're moved by some inward impulse. In other words, in the language of Thakur Bhaktivinoda, they're an antarmukh jana, an internal person. They're upasama silaha. Upasama sila, Prabhupada translates, says they're situated in a most peaceful existence. The word upasama means to subdue. Upasama means to completely subdue or control something. And silaha means some conduct or disposition. So upasama silaha, Prabhupada translates, they're situated in a peaceful existence. Literally, it means that someone whose conduct is completely subdued or controlled. Their senses are under control. And therefore, uparata atmanaha, they have control over their mind and their senses. And samavaganchanti, their, Prabhupada translates, very easy to obtain. But that word, as we'll find out from our acharyas, has a few different meanings. Today, I'd like to speak something about how we get sadhu sangha, the value of sadhu sangha, the absolute importance of sadhu sangha. There's a similar statement several places in the Vedic literatures. This is stating here, just look at it again, that saintly persons, they're friends to everyone, they have a peaceful consciousness, they've controlled their senses and mind, they easily attain the path of liberation. But persons who are unfortunate, they can't associate with them. So why is it that some people can associate with them? And why is it that some people can't? What does it mean to associate with a sadhu? I'd like to try to address today. There's a prayer in the 51st chapter of the 10th canto, when that chapter speaks about Muchukunda and how Krishna came and gave him liberation. Muchukunda, he began to offer this beautiful prayer to Krishna. Bhava Bhavargo Brahmato Yada Bhavech Janasyatar Yarchuta Satsamagamaha Satsangamo Yaheta Daiva Sadgato Paravari Shetwahi Jayate Matihi. Prabhupada translates this elsewhere. He says, when the material life of a wandering soul has ceased, because we're all wandering around, we want to watch the movies. And life is like a movie. We go and we just sit down and we forget all about all of our problems. We forget all about the situation in the world. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. When the material life of a wandering soul has ceased, O Chitta, at that time, he may attain the association of your devotees. And when he associates with them, there awakens in him devotion unto you, who are the goal of the devotees and the Lord of all causes and their effects. So, it's not such a cheap thing to associate with the devotees. Srila Prabhupada sometimes would say, the mosquito is associating with the king, right? But he's not appreciated, and that's not real Sangha. We also have to ask the question, what does real Sangha mean? I've seen many devotees, you go in their homes and they have a big photo of their Gurudev giving them beads. Or maybe they have many photos of themselves with their Gurudev. Yes, see, I had so much sadhu sangha. But sadhu sangha is not like going to Disney World. You go to Disney World, they have these life-size photograph cutouts of Michael Jackson, or some famous person. You can stand next to the cutout, and they'll take your picture and say, "Yes, I was with Michael Jackson." That's not real association with Michael Jackson. Just having my photo taken with Gurudev is not real sadhu sangha. Just even getting an instruction from Gurudev is not necessarily real sadhu sangha. But those persons who are really associating with Gurudev, who understand the heart of Gurudev, they're antarmukh janas. As this verse is describing here today, they're munis. Muni means someone who's moved by an inward impulse. And that impulse means they're moved by the order, and not just the order, but they understand the mood of Gurudev. And they've taken that mood of Gurudev to their heart. And that person, he's a real Muni. He's a real sadhu. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's another similar statement. This is in Madhya Lila chapter 22. Kona bhage karo sansak shayon mukha hoy, sadhu sange tabe Krishna rati upajoy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Kono bhagya, that by some bhagya, some good fortune, then someone, karo sansak shayon mukha, they become qualified to cross over the samsara, this ocean of material existence. And when that material existence decreases, when the fire of our material life goes down, just like you may be living in a big city and your house is right next to a river, but you can't hear the sound of the river. All that you can hear is the horns blazing from the trucks and the loud radio in the disco and all the different music and things. But at night, when all the cars are stopped and all the music is turned off, then you can hear the sweet sound of that river. So in a similar way, the living entity can't even hear the voice of his soul because there's too much noise. He's got the radio turned up too loud. But when that radio gets turned down a little bit, Prabhupada translates this verse, by good fortune, one becomes eligible to cross the ocean of nescience. And when one's term of material existence decreases, at that time, one may get an opportunity to associate with pure devotees. By such association, one's attraction to Krishna is awakened. We should ask this question: what does it mean to associate? What does it mean to be a Brijvasi? My Guru Maharaj used to ask that question. And he said that Kamsa, he's a Brijvasi. Kamsa is born in Mathura, that's within Braj Mandala. I once visited the birthplace of Putana. I didn't eat any dust or anything there. But we visited the birthplace of Putana. She's also born within Braj. Are they Brijvasis? Srila Prabhupada was born in Kolkata. He wasn't born in Braj. But we consider Srila Prabhupada to be a Brajvasi. Because Brajbas, or to live in the Dham, is a question of one's consciousness. Similarly, to associate with Gurudev is a question of consciousness. It's not just physical proximity or just some appointment that we've gotten. It's not even just that we've gotten Kunti Mala or Paita, Brahman thread, or even a Danda of sannyas. That doesn't necessarily mean that we've really associated with Gurudev. To teach us this, Mahaprabhu's associate, Ramachandra Puri, did a great service. Although he's initiated, he's a godbrother of Madhavananda Puri, disciple of Madhavananda Puri, and a godbrother of Ishwara Puri, Mahaprabhu's guru. Ramachandra Puri was a badmash. He was a great rascal. But Mahaprabhu, very interestingly, I like to contemplate that he always, generally, not always, but he would generally accept the crazy words of Ramachandra Puri. Ramachandra Puri would criticize him, you're eating too much. Mahaprabhu said, yes, thank you very much. It's my good fortune that you're giving me instructions. And he cut his eating in half. The other devotees were becoming very, very disturbed by it. But don't criticize Ramachandra Puri. According to Kavi Karnapur in his Gaura Ganadesh Deepika, Ramachandra Puri is Jatila in Krishna Lila. And that's her service. She creates some tension and thereby creates some sweetness in the pastimes of the divine couple. But he teaches us, don't be like that. Don't be just finding fault with everyone. We want to associate with sadhus by practicing bhakti because that association with devotees, that's the birthplace of bhakti. The Chaitanya Charitamrita again describes. Krishna bhakti janma mula hoy sadhu sangha. Krishna prema janme teno puna mukhya anga. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. beautiful verse. My Guru Maharaj used to often quote this. Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula, Hoya Sadhu Sangha. Mula means the root of something. What is a Janma Mula? The birthplace. The birthplace of Krishna Bhakti. Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula, Hoya Sadhu Sangha. The birthplace of Krishna Bhakti is Sadhu Sangha. Bhakti Stu Bhagavad Bhakta Sangena Parijayate. In the Brihad Naradiya Purana, verses there, which is quoted oftentimes by our acharyas, that this bhakti comes from the bhakta. As Srila Prabhupada would say, life comes from life. Life doesn't come from something dead. Life comes from life. Bhakti doesn't come from some place where there's no bhakti. Bhakti comes from bhakti. And therefore the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam says, Bhakti sanjayate bhaktiha. The bhakti comes from bhakti. So how do we get that bhakti? We get that bhakti by associating with devotees. Those devotees are more merciful than the Lord himself. But if someone has some envy, then they can't associate with the devotees. They can't appreciate the devotees. The Bhagavatam begins, the second verse of the Bhagavatam, the Mangalacharana, the Bhagavatam itself, is stated there, the Dharma projita kaitavoto paramanitsranam satam. That this Bhagavatam, Dharma projita kaitavatra, it kicks out all cheating religion, and nirmatsranam satam. It's only understood by those persons who are nirmatsaram, who are free from envy, who are satjanas. Otherwise, you cannot understand Srimad Bhagavatam. You can't really associate with devotees. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport to Bhagavatam 5.14.11, he says the Krishna consciousness movement aims at creating an atmosphere of non-envy. Of course, it's not possible for everyone to become Krishna conscious, but the Krishna consciousness movement can create an exemplary society wherein there's no envy. Srila Prabhupada is very clear. This was his desire. There should be a society free from envy. But there's a problem. When we're full of envy, we can't really associate with that. My Guru Maharaj sometimes used to say, what is ISKCON? Simple question. ISKCON is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Right? And then he would say, who is really a member? Someone who's Krishna conscious. And one time, I have to confess, in front of about 100 devotees, Guru Maharaj asked that question, and he pointed at me, and he said, Madhavananda, not yet joined. So when devotees, they ask, Prabhuji, when did you join the movement? And I say, well, I'd like to join, but I haven't joined yet. I'm hoping to. But being really Krishna conscious means a person who's really joined. But as long as someone has envy, they're not a member of the Krishna consciousness movement. Just like in Mayapur Dham, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Navadvip Mahatmya, he says there's a proto-Maya Shakti. There's this Shakti, this energy of the Lord, which covers the Dham, so that many people are not in the Dham, although it looks like it, but they're on top of the Dham. So similarly, who's really a member of our ISKCON society? If you go to the Ganga, I've seen new devotees come to Vrindavan or go to the Ganga, and they're very happy. I've been wanting to take bath in the Ganga for so long, and they go there and they say, oh my God, is that a dead body? And there's a lot of flies there. There's some human stool. Oh, I don't think I want to take bath today. And they back out. Is the Ganga contaminated? The Ganga is not contaminated. The Ganga is always pure. That doesn't mean that you want to drink the water right next to that dead body. It doesn't mean you want to take those nasty things out of the Ganga. But those nasty things are not actually the Ganga. They're just on top of the Ganga. So in a similar way, what is ISKCON? ISKCON means a society of devotees who are Krishna conscious. ISKCON means Srila Prabhupada's desire. And it doesn't always go the way Srila Prabhupada wanted. I've marked, I was mentioning this the other day in a class, we've traveled all over the world in the last 15, 20 years, and I found wherever we go, devotees have two things in common, at least, maybe some others, but at least two things they have in common wherever we go. Number one, they all chant Hare Krishna. And the second thing they have in common, everybody complains about institutions. Wherever we go, they're all, because that's the nature of devotees, they're independent, as is described in the 47th chapter of the Bhagavatam. Mana, what is it? Remember Krishna? Mana Satendriya. That the gopis, Jiva Goswami says in his commentary there, Mana Satendriya, the gopis are independent thinkers. And Prabhupada writes in a letter to Kurandar, he says that the purpose of this Krishna conscious movement is to create independent thinkers. That's what it means to be Krishna conscious, to be an independent thinker. So that's required. But as long as we're envious, we can't really belong. Now, envy does have a place on the body of the Lord. You may be interested to know. In the second canto of Bhagavatam, in chapter 6, there's some description given of the universal form of the Lord, the body of the Lord. And you'd be interested to know that on that universal body of the Lord, envy is also there. It's said there, Parimokshasya hingsaya. Hingsa means envy. Parimokshasya hingsaya, Prabhupada translates it. The evacuating hole of the Lord is a place of envy, or the backside of a person. In other words, if you're an envious person, you are and you can kind of fill in the blank. And it's not my thought, it's what the Bhagavatam says. Parimokshasya hingsaya. You have no place in this Krishna conscious movement. So if someone wants to get bhakti, it's not an option. If we want to get bhakti, we have to associate with devotees. In Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami gives kind of a postgraduate description of the process of getting bhakti. And he says something which can really spin someone's head around. It says something which seems very, very startling. We know, we say that the Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandho Jagat Pate, right? My dear Krishna, you're Karuna Sindhu, you're the ocean of mercy. Dina Bandho Jagat Pate, you're the friend of the fallen. But Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha says, well, excuse me, but that's not exactly true. He says something a little different. Tahi tad eva samukyam katam syad iti punar api hetur eva prastavya syad. What is the hetu? What is the cause that makes someone turn toward the Lord? And he says it's mercy. But what is that mercy? It's kripa, which gives someone the opportunity to go to the Lord. It's kripa, which gives someone the opportunity to come to the devotees. But he says again that kripa ata bhagavat kripaiva tat samukhe pratamakam karanam iti cha gonam. That the Lord's kripa is gonam. It's secondary. It's not primary. And then he defines what is kripa. Kripa rupas cetto vikaro. That kripa means when your heart it has a transformation. There's some movement of the heart. It takes place, he para dukasya swatitasi sparshe. Sparshe means to touch. When the duk, or the unhappiness of para dukasya, someone else's unhappiness, touches your heart. That's what mercy means. He says, but think about it. Krishna never has a bad day. Krishna doesn't get up sometimes and feel really, really depressed. Wow, I feel really bummed out. Those guys are really suffering there. Krishna, he's Satchid Ananda Vigraha. He's completely full of all happiness. There's no such thing as unhappiness in Krishna. So understanding that, Jiva Goswami, he says that apitamu moya dukkha sparshana sambhavena, that suffering, that ignorance can't touch his heart, just like darkness can't touch the sun. So he says, therefore, I'm really sorry to tell you guys this, but there's no compassion in Krishna when he sees the suffering of other people. Now, when we say that, even it sounds painful for me to say that, because we're all appealing to Krishna and Krishna's mercy. There's so many statements like that. How can we accept that? In one sense, we can't accept it, because we're again and again told to cry out and plead for Krishna's mercy. But Jiva Goswami is giving very scientific reasons to explain why Krishna doesn't have mercy. So he says then, there's only one thing left. Ata sat kripa kaika vasishyate But this kripa, only one place we can get that kripa. Santopi tadanim yadyapi samsarika dukkha sprisyanti eva. It's by the mercy of the devotees. Because although the devotees are living in this world, and their samsarika dukkha na sprisyanti eva, that dukkha in this material world, sprisyanti eva, doesn't touch them. Still, sometimes tatapi means still, sometimes tatapi labda jagara swapna dukkha vate kadachit smeyur apityatas tesham samsarike kripa bhavati. But sometimes they remember their previous suffering. Just like swapna dukkha vate, someone remembers some suffering in a dream. Because the devotee is so absorbed in bhakti, he has no problems. He's not worried about conspiracy things. He's not worried about the government or this or that or that. As Prabhupada once said during World War II, he said, let the bombs drop on our head. We don't care. Krishna will protect us. We depend upon Krishna. And you'll mark an interesting point. One of the greatest conspiracies in the history of the world was during the Mughal invasion of India. And when the Mughals invaded Vrindavan, they were mass murdering Brahmins and Vaishnavas. They were breaking temples. They broke the Govindaji temple. They broke the Mathura Janmastan. We once went to Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan, we were taking this big mosque built by some Muslim king. And the stone from that mosque came from the Krishna Janmastan in Mathura. That's the kind of business they would do. They would take the deity of Krishna and put him on the steps to the mosque so that all the Muslim people, when they're going to the mosque, they could kick the deity. And they tortured brutally and murdered so many Brahmin pujaris and Vaishnavas. But my question is this: how many times do you read about that in the works of our 6 Goswamis? It was going on during their time, but they didn't say a word about it. During the time of the British, there were so many atrocities going on. They murdered ruthlessly people. They did so many bad things in India. How many times do you read about that in the writings of Thakur Bhaktivinoda or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati? Now, you may say they're not dealing with reality. Those guys are just Hare Krishna people. They're just off in some other place. But they're practical. And they understood that Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. That really, if you do Krishna Bhakti, everything else is taken care of. So the devotees, they're Krishna Kripa Shrimurti. They're the embodiment of Krishna's mercy. And without that mercy, it's not possible to get Krishna's mercy. Krishna does have mercy. Krishna has wonderful mercy. Krishna is so compassionate. He's so kind. But the personification of his mercy is the devotees. They're Krishna Kripa Shrimurti. That is Krishna's mercy. So we take shelter of those devotees. I once heard a story from Radhanath Maharaj when he came to Jagannath Puri in his last yatra. And it was a story that he heard about one of Srila Prabhupada's dear friends, his godbrother, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. At one point, Sridhar Maharaj was a temple president in one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's temples. There was a scandal. Don't think it only happens in ISKCON. It happens all over the place. And there was a brahmachari who got caught with some girl. And it was a big scandal amongst the brahmacharis. They're very, very strict. So they told their Guru Maharaj, they told Srila Bhaktisiddhanta what had happened. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta called for that brahmachari and very heavily chastised him and told him, you can go wherever you want, but you can't stay here. Get out. And that brahmachari started crying. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was unmoved. Get out. Go. And the brahmachari bowed his head and started leaving. And after he'd gone, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta turned to Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj and said, now you go bring him back. and Sridhar Maharaj said, but Guru Maharaj, how, if you've kicked him out, how can I bring him back? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta explained, just as Kala Krishna Das was rejected by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but the devotees, they were more merciful than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Kala Krishna Das also had a problem with a girl, some gypsy girl in South India. Got a little in Maya somehow. And sometimes people, they compare this to the conditioned living entities in this world. They say that Kala Krishna Das was an eternal associate of the Lord, and he fell down like that, so we can also fall down. When I hear that, it hurts my heart a little. Because I have to tell you honestly, I've fallen down so many times. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has not shown up yet to rescue me the way that he did with Kala Krishna Das. There is a huge difference between Kala Krishna Das and myself, very obviously. Anyway, Mahaprabhu rejected him, and he wouldn't have anything to do with him. And when he returned to Jagannath Puri, he told the devotees, you take this fellow, he's a badmas, rascal. And the devotees were more merciful. And what did they do? They sent him to do service. You go to Navadvip and tell Sachimata, tell Advaitacharya and the other devotees that Mahaprabhu has returned from South India, and tell them what happened. And understanding that whoever does that service is going to get a tremendous amount of mercy from Sachimata. We were just reading a commentary last night attributed to Srila Jiva Goswami in Narpita Chirim Chirat verse. And it's described as Siddha Hridaya Kandaresparatuva, that Mahaprabhu will always appear in the heart. And someone may ask a question, well, this Mahaprabhu is amazing. This is in the commentary. He's so amazing. How can we, tell me about his pastimes? And the answer is Siddha Hridaya Kandaresparatuva. Don't worry about it. They'll appear in your heart automatically by his mercy. And then the person who's asking the questions in his commentary says, but I'm just a fallen person. I've committed so many offenses, and the pastimes are not coming to me, so what should I do? And for that person, the last two words are given in the verse, Sri Sachinanda. That you meditate, why Sri Sachinanda in such a verse, which those of you who may know the verse, I won't go in that direction, but it speaks about some very, very high things, some very confidential things in connection with Srimati Radharani. Why he's mentioning Sri Sachinanda? Because there's so much tremendous mercy to be gotten by calling out the name of Sachimata. We're calling out the name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a son of Mother Sachi. So the devotees, they sent Kala Krishna Das to that Sachimata, knowing you get her mercy, you're doing really good. Mahaprabhu can't refuse you at that time. So important to associate with the devotees. But how do we get association with such devotees? Sometimes we think, I don't know. These devotees are not very good. I wish I could associate with someone like one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, or Prabhupada himself, or Jayananda Prabhu, or Jamuna, or this person or that. But I often think that life is like a game of cards. I don't know if you play cards. You're devotees, so you don't play cards. But I used to play cards before I was a devotee. And when you're playing cards, you get dealt a hand. That's a technical phrase. And you get, 5 cards or 7 cards or whatever. And in that game of cards, you can only play according to what cards you have, whatever you've gotten. And if you say, I don't like these cards, that's fine. You can't play the game. You can quit. But if you want to play the game, you take what's been given to you. So in a similar way, we can't just decide, I'm going to have this sadhu sangha or that, but it's a question of desire in the heart. And this is described in a very wonderful way in Jagadananda Pandit's Prema Vivarta. I'd like to sing something to you from that. My Guru Maharaj like these verses very much. Chitkana Jiva Krishna Chinmoya Bhaskar Nichit Krishna Deki Krishna Korene Adar Krishna Bahir Mukahana Bhogavan Chakore Nikatashta Maya Tare Japatiya Tare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So Chitkana Jiva, the Jiva, he's Chitkana, he's a particle of consciousness. Chinmaya Bhaskara, just like an atom of light coming from the sun. Nitya Krishna Deki Krishna Korene Adar. Krishna, he's complete consciousness, and as long as the jivas, they're saying Krishna, they're fixing Krishna, they're conscious on Krishna, then they have some reverence for him. But when they turn their faces away from Krishna, they become Krishna Bahirmukh. And Hoya Bhogavanchakori, they desire some material enjoyment. Then Nikatasta Maya Tare Japatiyadari. Maya grabs them. And their consciousness becomes covered. Maya grasta jiver, hoya sabhava udoy. Just like someone who's been haunted. Pisachi Paili says, Pisachi means a witch. Just like a witch. A person's consciousness becomes covered. And then he forgets. Amisiddha Krishna Das Ekata Bhule Mayara Nafarahana Chiradina Bhule Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram. He forgets. Ami Siddha Krishna Das, Ekata Bhule. He forgets that I'm a servant of Krishna. And Maya Nafara means a slave. He becomes a slave of Maya. Kaburaja, sometimes life's good, and he's a king. This is the movie of life. Kaburaja, Kabu Praja. Other times you become a citizen, Praja. Kabu Vipra, sometimes you're a Brahmin. Kabu Sudra, sometimes life's not so good, you become a Sudra, you have to dig ditches. Kabu Duki, sometimes you're unhappy. Kabu Suki, sometimes you're very happy. Kabu Kita Kshudra, sometimes you become a worm and stool. That's life. Kabu Swarge, sometimes you're in the heavenly planets. Kabu Marte, sometimes you're in this Marchalok, this material world. Narakeva Kabu, sometimes you go to hell. Kabu Deva, sometimes you're a demigod. Kabu Daicha, sometimes a demon. Kabu Das Prabhu, sometimes you're a servant, and sometimes you're a master. So Jagadananda Pandit describes. Erupe sangsara brahmite kona jan sadhu sange nija tattva avagatahan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Erupa sangsara brahmite kona jan. Wandering through this material existence, which is just like one movie after another. You're just sitting there, mesmerized, looking at the bright lights and the film that's going by. Brahmite Konajam, wandering about by some good fortune. Sadhu Sangha Nija Tattva Avagatahan. If you come in association with devotees, and this is the first association with devotees, and you learn something, Nija Tattva, about the truth about yourself, your own identity, then avagatahan, your life has some meaning. Nija tattva janiya sansarana chai kenava bhajinu maya kore hoy hoy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, by that association with the devotees, Nija Tattva Janiya, then they begin to understand who I am. The devotees tell me, hey, you're not your body, you're a spirit soul. And samsara nachai, you become detached from this material life. Kenavaba jinomaya kori hoi hoi. And then you start looking at your situation and how you've been controlled by Maya for so long. And hoi hoi, then he begins to call out and cry. Kande bole oh hey Krishna Amitava Das Tomara Charana Chari Hoila Sarvanas. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. At that time begins what my Guru Maharaj used to call Atma Krandana, or the crying of the soul. It's an existential cry, trying to understand who am I? Why am I here? It's not just the desire to be religious. It's not just a desire to be an honest person and take care of your family in a religious way. It's not just a desire to be in the mode of goodness or to go to Mangal Artik or to chant a certain number of rounds. But there's something in the heart which is burning. Kende boli, oh hey Krishna, Amitava Das. Oh Krishna, help me, I'm your servant. Tomara Charanachari, but I gave up your service. Hoila Sarvanas, and now everything has been destroyed. I become a servant of this witch, Maya. And he begins to cry to Krishna. Maya ke Pichani Raki Krishna Panichai. At that time, when Krishna hears that crying of the living entity, then Krishna, he reaches out to help that living entity. And how does he do that? He does that in the form of Sadhu Guru. So Sadhu Guru is there twice. And the first time we get what Bhaktivinoda Thakur in one purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Zamrita Pravaha Bhashya, he says there's three types of Sukriti: Karma Mukhi Sukriti, Jnana Mukhi Sukriti, and Bhakti Mukhi Sukriti. Or Sukriti, pious benefit which is obtained through karma, through jnana, and through bhakti. What does Bhakti Mukhi Sukriti mean? One of the first questions I ever asked my Guru Maharaj when I went and saw him in Vancouver, I said, Maharaj, what is the difference between someone chanting before initiation and after initiation? And he liked that question very much. He smiled and nodded his head. And he said, Hare Baba, you should know, if you chant, even before initiation, you can get dharma, artha, kama, and even moksha. You can get those four things. But those four things are known as Kaitava Chatushtoy, or four types of cheating. In comparison to Panchama Purushartha, the fifth and highest goal, and that Krishna praying, you can only get Bhakti Stu Bhagavad Bhakta Sangena Parijayati, by association with a devotee. Because that devotee is Krishna Kripa Srimurti. He is Krishna's mercy. We've seen so many people come to Krishna consciousness to some extent or another, because they got a book from some devotee. Maybe one of us gave them a book or something, and they came to the movement, and they joined us, but maybe they didn't really join, because they didn't stay. They went away. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in a series of articles which are later published by the Devananda Gaudiya Mutt in the form of a book called Bhakti Tattva Vivek. Bhanu Maharaj has translated this nice book. Bhaktivinoda says there that why is it that some people, they go away? And he says there that Shraddha or faith is not enough. You may have faith, but that's not enough. You have to have something else. You have to have ruchi. You have to have some kind of taste. And that taste is obtained by someone who has taste. When we serve someone, Shushusho Shuddhadanasya, Vasudeva Kata Ruchi Shamaha Sevaya Viprapunya Tirtana Sevana. When we serve a devotee for the pleasure of that devotee, then we get that ruchi. So in the beginning, we may get some Bhakti Mukhi Sukriti. We hear the Harinam party. It's so fortunate. We take some prasad. We get a book. That's so very, very fortunate. At this time of the year, this is the meditation of so many devotees. We want to give good fortune to everyone. But we also need to have good fortune in our lives. And we should ask this question, have I gotten good fortune? We want people to join this movement, but we should ask the question, have I joined this movement yet? Am I really doing sadhu sangha? And if I've really joined this movement, why am I suffering? Why do I have material desires? Why am I envious? Why am I angry? Why are there so many politics and things going on? Somebody's not joined. And maybe, just maybe, it's me. So we should understand the value of sadhu sangha and this principle of how to associate, how to see a Vaishnava. Jagadananda Pandit in another place, he says that Vaishnava chineti nai devara shakati. Very fascinating statement. He says the demigods, devara shakati, they don't have the shakti to be able to tell who's a devotee and who's not. I think I can tell who's a devotee. I read Upadeshamrita 3 times. I memorized 5 verses from Bhagavad Gita. I'm almost an incarnation. I can tell who's a sadhu. It's not such a simple thing. The demigods, they can't tell. Try to understand how profound the difference is between our perception and the perception of the demigods. We can give an example which is actually not nearly correct. We here in this room, we have, 15 devotees maybe sitting, talking with. And there must be 1 or 2 ants, maybe a lot of ants. I don't know how clean you're keeping it, Prabhu. But there may be some ants here in your flat. Now those ants, they're also here during the kirtan. They're also here during the katha. But what are they perceiving? At best, maybe they perceive there's this giant mountain that's shaking the ground and almost steps on me. Or maybe when I pray to God, that little ant, that mountain drops a little grain of sugar or something, and life is good. And that's their perception. They can't understand what we're saying, what kind of clothes you're wearing, what exchanges the devotees are having. In a similar way, we can't understand what the demigods are experiencing. But to make this comparison with the demigods, it's actually the demigods' consciousness is millions of times more perceptive, because Vayu can perceive wherever there's air, Agni can perceive wherever there's fire, Varuna can perceive wherever there's water. Every person's body has air, fire, and water. They can perceive within everybody's body. Their sense of perception is so vast. And they're not slouches. They study under Narad Muni. They've gone through Bhakti Shastri. They know Bhagavad Gita and all those things. But Vaishnava Chinitinai, Devata Shakti, they can't understand who's a Vaishnava. I want to finish. I think we're going a little bit late. I hope I can beg apology, because I want to finish. Madhyena Samarpayat, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says you should finish with something sweet. So we'd like to finish with a nice story from Ramanujacharya. Ramanuja had a disciple, his name was Lalacharya. And on one time, his Guru Maharaj called for him. He said, Lalacharya, you've pleased me so much. I have a special instruction for you. You should love the devotees millions of times more than you love the Lord. And Lalacharya heard that instruction. And he said, Guru Maharaj, I'm sorry, he's an honest person. I can't do that. I can't love the devotees. How can I love the devotees millions of times more than I love the Lord? I can't do that. And Ramanuja said, okay then you should treat all the devotees just like they're as good as your Guru. And Lalacharya was quiet again. He said, Ramanuja, I can't do that. I'm sorry. And then Ramanuja said, okay, final sale, 75% off. He says, and you should love them the way you love your brother, and no less than that. And Lalacharya said, yes, Gurudev. And he accepted that instruction in his heart. He's a very simple devotee. And from that point on, whenever he would see the devotees, he loved them like his own brother. On one occasion, Lalacharya's wife had gone to the bank of the Kaveri River to wash some cloth. And while she was there on the bank of the river, she saw a dead body floating down the river. And she noticed that this dead body, the corpse, had Vaishnav tilak on and Kunti Mala. So she went and told her husband, I saw this body of a dead Vaishnav wearing tilak and Kunti Mala. So Lalacharya, when he heard about that, he went and got some other people, said, hey, bring a palanquin, get some musical instruments. My brother died. And they went, and they took the body with great ceremony. They put it on a palanquin, playing some musical instruments and doing kirtan. And they brought the dead body back to the smasana, the crematorium ground, and they burned the body. And Lalacharya began to cry. That's crazy. He's never met that person, doesn't know who it is or anything about him, but he's crying. My brother died. Because really, he took to heart what his Guru Maharaj had told him. He was crying. And anyway, he said, but my dear mind, don't cry, it's okay. He went back to Godhead. He was in the Kaveri River, and we burned his body like this. And so then on the 13th day afterwards, Lalacharya, he began to arrange to perform the Shrad ceremony. And he invited his relatives and local Brahmins in the village. And everyone said, oh, yes, thank you very much, I'll go. But nobody came. Nobody showed up. Instead, they all got together and they started criticizing Lalacharya. They said, this guy is completely nuts. Ever since he joined those Hare Krishna people, he's just gone wacko. I find some dead body in the river. Who knows what that dead body was? It was a Sudra or a Malecha or whatever, because it had tilak on it and Kunti Mala. He's crying and saying it's like my brother, and now he's wanting to do some shred. He wants us to go there and eat that food. They're speaking in a very offensive way. Because Lalacharya is a Vaishnava, and he's going to serve prasadam. And this is not prasadam, it's food. How can it be prasadam? in honor of this dead body. We don't even know what caste he belongs to or anything. We can't go there. We're not going to take part in this thing. So Lalacharji was waiting and waiting, and he saw nobody came. And he felt very sad. So then he went to his Guru Maharaj, Ramanuja, and he said, Gurudev, I told him the whole story. My brother died. I found his body in the river. We burned his body, and I invited all the Brahmins and everyone to come for the Shrad, but nobody's come. I don't know what to do. And Ramanuja listened, and he didn't say anything for a moment. He looked up at the sky, and then he looked down, and he told Lalacharji, it's okay. You go home. Make sure there's enough prasadam. You'll have some guests come to take the prasadam. Yes, Guru Maharaj. And he had complete faith in the words of his Gurudev. And so he went home, and after a little while, a group of very effulgent Brahmins showed up in the village. No one in the village had ever seen them before. And they asked the villagers, they said, do you know some fellow named Lalacharji? Yeah, that's that crazy guy. He lives over there. And they went and they knocked on his door, and Lalacharji opened the door. And Guru Maharaj said, you were coming, please come in. Prasadam's here. And he sat them all down. He put leaf plates out. He served them all prasadam. He offered his obeisances to all of them. And then by the mercy of those devotees, he saw something extraordinary. He saw they weren't ordinary persons. He saw they all had Chaturbuj Murti. They all had 4 arms. They were Vaikuntha Basis, residents of the spiritual world. And Lalacharji really began to cry then. Thank you so much for coming. This is Gurudev's mercy. And he offered his pranams to those devotees. Meanwhile, those Brahmins, those envious Brahmins in the village, they were all waiting outside. They said, here's what we're going to do. All these people, they're not really Brahmins. We're calling them people, because if they were Brahmins, they wouldn't be going to Lalacharji's house to eat this food at this ceremony for some dead body. He doesn't even know who it was, calls it his brother. They're so-called Brahmins. So look, that's what we do. Here's what we're going to do. We're all going to sit outside the house, and when they come out, we're going to make fun of them. Just like, 5-year-old kids in school, he's like, nanny, poo, whatever. They make fun of the other kids like that. And so when those associates of the Lord came out of the house, and those Brahmins didn't see that they had 4 arms, but something strange happened. When they came out of the house, they all started walking, and it was like they were going up steps, only there was no steps there. They just started going up into the air. And the Brahmins were a little surprised, a little shocked, and they were watching until they just went up and they just disappeared. And they had what we would call in American attitude adjustment. They realized, well, we kind of made a really big mistake. And they went to Lalacharji, and they began to cry, and they fell at his feet. Please forgive us. We were so envious. Because of our envy, we couldn't appreciate the devotees. We couldn't understand their qualification. We couldn't appreciate you. And Lalacharji told them, no. It's by your mercy, because you didn't come. Because you didn't come. Then they came, and I got to have their darshan. I got to have their service. Thank you so much. And then the Brahmins said, we'd like to become your servants. And they prayed like that to Lalacharji. So this is a principle which is being spoken about in this verse today. That Yadidam Yoganasasanam Navad Ekad Arundate Yan Yasta Ganda Munaya Upasana Sila Uparatatmanaha Sama Vagachanti. That those persons who we want to go to, those saintly persons who are Nyasta Dandaha, who have given up all types of envy. And those persons, by their association, we can very easily get everything. We can get liberations insignificant. Mukti tucha phalohoy, nama basa hoite. Chaitanya Charitamrita says that mukti, tucha phalo. That's an insignificant fruit of even nama bas. If you're chanting under the guidance of Gurudev, you can get so much more than that. But those persons who are very unfortunate, they can't associate. They can't appreciate those devotees. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in one place, he says that as long as someone doesn't have faith and they can't see the devotees, and they'll always be engaged in envious, violent, and cruel activities. I think it was those three. Krishna Kun here? No. Envious. What was the three things? Remember? You don't remember. Okay. I remember envious. I remember violent, and one other quality. You're going to be forced to this if you don't have faith in the devotees. So we should be simple. Now you may say, but Prabhu, that the guys this or that. But Rupa Goswami, he says, hey, Krishneti yashagiri tamma sadhiyeta. Anybody who chants Krishna's name even once, you should Krishneti yashagiri tamma sadhiyeta. You should give respect to that person, at least in your mind. But you don't know. Once when we were in one Islamic country, I won't say where, but the devotees warned us. They said, the government sends spies to the temple. There's only one legal temple in the whole country. And devotees in that country, you're allowed to read Prabhupada's books, but you can't keep them in your house. And sometimes the police, they raid people's houses. And if you have Prabhupada's books, they take them away from you. You're not allowed to have them. You can read them at the temple. So the devotees told me, there's spies coming. So we were going to that country for, 3-4 years in a row. And they gave a Sunday feast lecture there. And I said, some people say there's spies coming. And I said, we like spies. Just send more spies. Spies are very good. We have so many things we want to share. Send more spies. Somehow that was the last year the government let us come into the country. My wife and the government's changed now, so we'll see what happens. We're supposed to go back to later on. So you can't tell if they're a devotee, if they're a spy. Dikshasti chepanati vishchabhajantamisham. I should offer obeisances to anyone who's dikshit, who has Gayatri mantra, and is bhajanta isha, who's worshiping the Lord. But how do you know that? In Kolkata, there's so many people, they come to the rickshaws when you're sitting at the light in the rickshaw, and some guy comes with some incense and he starts going, moomba, moomba, hoomba, hoomba, making some strange sounds and waving some incense. And then he says, hey, paisa da, paisa da. You don't know. He might be a bungi, someone who cleans the streets for a living, but he decided to buy a 2 paisa paita, a Brahmin thread, and now he's coming around and acting like a Brahmin. You don't know. But Rupa Goswami says, Dikshasti chet pranati vishchabhajantamisham. You should respect him. And then Dadi Shunya Hridamipsita Sangha Labdya. That someone whose heart is free from the propensity to criticize others, Sangha Labdya, that's the association I want. Well, okay, here I am. I haven't criticized anybody. It's been at least an hour. So that must be me, right? I can control my tongue for a little while, and maybe we can fool people. So what does it mean then? And Prabhupada in his commentary in this verse says that Krishneti yashagiri tammanasabdiyeta indicates the Kanishta Adhikari, Dikshasti chetpanati vishya bhajantamisham indicates the Madhyamadhikari. That person is bhajan vigyan, nindadi shunya hridam. That person, he's the uttam. What does it mean? You can't tell. And if you can tell, we've got a job for you. You can come to the GBC meetings and tell us who's really a bona fide guru and who's really not. You can solve a lot of problems. But we haven't found such a person yet, or any machine that can tell that. So then what does it mean when Rupa Goswami says these things? It means that we should appreciate these qualities. The quality of someone chanting the holy name. Even they may be a demon, but they're chanting the holy name. That's an extraordinary demon. It's a chanting demon. It's a special demon. Someone has second initiation. They may also be a spy or this, but they're a special spy. They have second initiation. Someone may be a first-class rascal, but they don't criticize him. They're not criticizing anyone. That's such a good quality. I want to associate with those qualities. I want to respect the qualities of chanting, the qualities of second initiation, worshiping the deity, the quality of being expert in bhajan and not finding fault with others. So I'm sorry, I should stop there. I know we've gone over time. And I'd like to, I don't know if there's time, Padma Mataji, if there's time for any reflections to anybody.
Yes, Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for so many references and so much nectarian class, Prabhuji. Actually, you basically touched on so many things. Like important thing is sadhu sangha. Association is very, very important, and then serving them and all, and do not never ninda devotees. Don't blame the devotees, but you try to see the faults in you. Try to see a lot of faults in, like so many things you have touched upon, Prabhuji. Devotees, if you have any questions, Prabhuji, do you have time for the questions and reflections, Prabhu? Or
actually, I tell you the truth, I like reflections better than questions. Questions are okay.
So
nice to hear devotees'
please,
realizations.
Please, devotees, please share your realizations and.
Bhagavatam actually says this is the function that we're doing. 11.3.30 in the Bhagavatam says, Parasparana katanam pavanam bhagavad-visa. I practically quote this every day. That we should learn how to associate with devotees by paraspara, having back and forth discussions. It's not that here I am, I'm giving the class on the Bhakti Sangam, Bhakti Japa Sangha group, and I'm so special. But there should be some interaction.
Yeah, I
Krishna
see.
Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Mataji. Go ahead, Mataji.
Yeah. Hi, Krishna Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharajas.
Can we see you? Can you show your face too? It's nice.
Raise the
Thank
hands.
you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So Prabhuji, when you say, like, I've been hearing it for so long that we do not criticize anybody, and at the same time, we also say that we need to associate with the Sajatiya or the similar-minded devotees. So, or for our own spiritual advancement, we need to associate with devotees who are sort of advanced than ourselves. So these two things, Prabhuji, I often find it contradictory. Like, when you realize somebody is advanced, we have to realize that somebody is not. So the moment we realize somebody is not, is it not a kind of Vaishnava aparat? Because even being a devotee must be chanting, even might be initiated. But, they still talk about mundane things or movies or things like that. So realizing that they are not being Krishna conscious, is it not a aparat, Prabhuji?
We should understand, first of all, that we're not the seer. We can't tell who's a devotee and who's not a devotee. But what does that mean? If I go down the street and I see a Harinam party on one side of the street, and on the other side of the street I see some pornography shop, do I think, well, I'm not sure which one of the devotees, maybe the pornography shop, or maybe, no. It should be pretty obvious. The devotees are the ones who are chanting the holy name. So as we mentioned in the beginning, that sadhu means anyone who gives up material life. There's so many different sadhus in India. But Swajati Yasha Snigdha Sadhu Sangha Satovare, Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says we want to associate with people, first of all, who are Swajatiya. And my Guru Maharaj translated that literally in your own caste, or literally your own family, or it can mean that someone who has a similar understanding that you do. For example, we may be living in the West and we're working a job and life is very complicated. And we decide I'm going to go to India and find some Babaji at Radhakund who's just doing Nirjan Bhajan and chanting 3 lakhs a day. But that may be very difficult because they're not Swajati. They don't understand our heart. They're in a completely different platform, completely different place. Swajati Ashiyat Snigdha, they should be affectionate to us. And they should be sadhu. And sadhu, my Guru Maharaj translated here, he commented that it simply means someone who's more advanced than us. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his song Guru Dev Kripa Bindu Dil, he says, Deho Nata Jata Jata. That please, Guru Dev, give me the ability to treat people according to their position. So it doesn't mean that I see this person's a Kanisha, this person's a Madhyam, or this person's envious. I don't know what that person's heart is. What if you saw a devotee who was eating fish? What would you think? And maybe that person was the temple president. Oh my God, it would be a big scandal, isn't it? But what if I told you that devotee was an eternal associate of the Lord and his name was Garuda? And that's just what he does. But he's an eternal associate of the Lord. In fact, in the Sri Sampradaya, they consider him to be Vishnu Tattva. Such a personality. So the point is that we can't see. And we should give up the evil propensity of trying to see. But at the same time, we have to see. We have to distinguish between the pornography shop and the Harinam party. And what do we see? These people are chanting. These people are wearing kunti mal and tilak. I don't know. Putana, when she entered into Braj, maybe she was wearing tilak and kunti mal. That doesn't necessarily mean they're a devotee, but I'm respecting kunti mal and tilak. So we have to act as madhyamadikaris, ishwari tadadinishu, baliseshu dvisatchucha, prema maitri kupopiksha, yakaroti samadhyama. Very important. We shouldn't try to act like Kanishas, and we shouldn't try to imitate the Uttam. But ishwari tadadinishu, so to the Supreme Lord, we offer our love. Adinishu, to the devotees of the Lord. Maitri, we become friends with them. And those persons who are dvisatsu, who are envious, then we practice upeksha, or neglect. And those persons who are balisetsu, who are innocent, those persons, we give mercy to them. And we give mercy to the extent that we find they're simple. They may be a little simple, we can give them a little mercy. They're a lot simple, we can give them a lot of mercy. If someone's a little envious, we deal with them in one way. If they're a lot envious, we deal with them in another way. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma, he says that what does it mean, this upeksha, or neglect? He says you may meet someone who's hungry, but they're a really envious person. You can give them prasadam. Maybe it's the wintertime and it's really cold and they don't have a blanket. You may give them a blanket. They don't have a place to stay. You may give them a place to stay in your house, but they're envious. He said, you're not touching upeksha yet. He said, upeksha means don't speak Krishna katha to them. And isn't it, we've experienced this sometimes even with devotees. Hey, Prabhu, what do you think Krishna's doing this time of day? And they look at you and say, you're not supposed to talk about that. Or, I've already read that book. Leave me alone. You're trying to preach to me? I already know that stuff. There's some envy, even though they're a devotee. You can't speak to them. But we should love anyone. Even we appreciate Putana. Mother Yashoda and Mohini Mata, they appreciated Putana. And why? Sridhar Swami, Bhavarti Deepika, and our different acharyas are coming, because she dressed like a devotee. Doesn't say exactly how she dressed. Maybe she had tilak on, I don't know. But she dressed something like a devotee. And they were respectful to her because of that. So we respect this dress of a devotee. But we should learn this subtle art, deho nata jata jata, of giving respect. Is that helpful? It's not offensive. We have to distinguish between poison and nectar, between clean things and dirty things, between bad association and good association. But we're not the seer. And we just do the best that we can. But we're always praying to Krishna, you please send me sadhu sangha. And Krishna will do that. Is that okay? Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. I also need your blessings, Prabhu, so that, I have those, drishti anyway, so that I can differentiate for my own spiritual benefit and not for any criticism or anything, Prabhu. Please bless me, Prabhu. Thank you. Dandavat pranam, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, let's see. Pennsylvania is there.
Please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your class. It was wonderful and so timely for me. I've just been traveling a bit around the country and I've had such beautiful association. I feel like I'm still floating on a cloud from association. And I really appreciate your comments about true association with Guru and Sadhu is understanding and knowing his mood and consciousness. I think that's a very valuable point to make, and it's something that I find it's very helpful to me. I also loved when you said that we can only truly understand Bhagavatam when we association with devotees and have association with devotees if our hearts are free of envy. Another thing that I'm so grateful to hear from you, just a good reminder of where I should try to a goal for my own consciousness going forward, and also emphasizing the mercy of devotees. I really appreciate that's how we really get Krishna consciousness, is through the mercy of devotees. So thank you for all of those points. I just would love to hear from you about, again, because I've had such wonderful association. I feel like I've been floating on a cloud, and now that I'm back home where I don't have as much association, I mean, I have this beautiful group online on, this Zoom called Bhakti Sangha Japa group, which is my heart and soul. But when we don't have a lot of physical association, or I don't have a lot of devotees who live, close enough to me that I can really spend a lot of time with, which is what I'm looking for, is to spend a lot of time with devotees. What would you say to that? How can I deepen my practice and associate with devotees if I don't have many in my area?
Was one great sadhu once said, the environment is always friendly. Whatever situation that we find ourselves in, we accept. Krishna made this arrangement somehow. This is a good arrangement for me. So I don't have association, that's a good arrangement? Yes, because then I appreciate it. Then I cry and I hanker for it. Because if I have it all the time, then I may become complacent. And even see, there were some devotees who were associating with Prabhupada, and they couldn't appreciate Srila Prabhupada. They had such association, but they couldn't appreciate it. So when we have some separation, my grandmother used to comment, it makes the heart grow fonder. That's separation. And separation from our Gurudev. When he leaves this world and we can't be, it intensifies our desire to want to be with him. It creates another kind of Sangha in the heart. And that's the Sangha that we ultimately want to be with, a real Sangha of the heart, because this physical Sangha, that's also Jiva Goswami and Bhakti Sundarbha says we should also do physical service for our Gurudev. And personally, if I can hear from disciples of Srila Prabhupada about Prabhupada, I like it very much. But some of them never met Prabhupada. And I like to hear about Prabhupada from them still, because they did so much service and they got so much mercy. But if I can hear from Brahmananda Prabhu, or I can hear from Jamuna, wow, that's the gold standard. Because they had so much physical association with Prabhupada. And it wasn't just physical, but it was heartfelt, and they got personal instructions and guidance. So we want to hanker for that. So that comes by good fortune. Only by good fortune is that arising. So we have to hanker and cry to Krishna. Krishna's doing something for some purpose. He wants me to hanker for it. And I really appreciate your comment also, that it's so wonderful to be able to associate like this. And then you said, but. And the word but is important. You may go to the gopis of Vrindavan and tell them, don't cry. I know Krishna left Vrindavan, but it's okay. Krishna's on Facebook. You can associate with Krishna on Zoom. He's there. Will the gopis of Vrindavan be satisfied with that? I don't think so. They want to see Krishna. They want to be able to touch Krishna. We want to be with the devotees. And so this kind of association, then it makes us hanker more. And that's a kind of mercy. That's my humble thought. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your answer, Hare Krishna. And thank you again for your association today. Your classes are always so wonderful. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. I think I have a few comments on the chat box, Prabhu. Raj Prabhu is saying, what a wonderful class, so many references. Thank you for your beautiful association. Even Megha Mataji is saying, such an amazing class, so many great points you brought up for devotees and the qualities of the devotees, how important is the association of devotees in our progress for Krishna consciousness. Thank you so much, Prabhu. So Radha Krishna, so thank you.
Why did Srila Prabhupada, if we say Harinama, Harinama, Harinama Eva Kevalam, that the holy name is everything, why did Prabhupada waste our time and give us Bhagavatam class every day? Why don't we just sit and chant? Right? And some devotees, maybe they may think like that. Because this paraspara anukatanam pavanam bhagavad, he said, when we come together with devotees and there's some back and forth, some reflections and things, that creates a Vaishnava Sangha. And it gives some juice to our kirtan. Because if you're doing kirtan, but you're just, what is the conception in the kirtan? Some people come because there's prasadam afterwards. Some girls come because there's some cute boys there. Some people come because it's like a rock and roll concert. It's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. What is the conception? And therefore, we gave some talk not so long back. We called it the Kirtan Katha symbiosis. And these two, they're in a very intimate connection. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said once that just as you can't separate Krishna from his Swarup Shakti Radharani, you also can't separate Krishna Katha and Krishna Kirtan. Because if you do Krishna Kirtan, what is a conception? But when you have Katha, then you have a conception. But the Katha should inspire you to do japa. The Katha should inspire you to do Kirtan. So just some thought. Radha Krishna Prabhu said something here. Then pranams, I'm also praying devotee Sangha, praying for devotee Sangha and learning from them. Hare Krishna, Bhakti Sangha, Gupta Bodhi's pranam. All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for what you're doing. Good.
Thank you so much for such an enlightening class, Prabhu, and with all the so many references and emphasizing on the association and the mercy of the devotees and Guru. And thank you so much, Prabhu. And
several devotees mentioned, I just want to make a quick comment. Several devotees mentioned, oh, you made so many references, you quoted some. I have to tell you something honestly. My Guru Maharaj once said, he told all his disciples, if you can't quote Shastra, don't tell them you're my disciple. So it's not like I'm so qualified, but I'm just afraid. I have to try to do this to please my Guru.
But these are beautiful, Prabhu, because when you refer them and then explain each and every meaning and try to see this is the mercy and prema, Krishna prema, how do you get Krishna prema and all those, it touches the heart and it try to implement those things, Prabhu. It's so nice, Prabhu. If nobody has any realizations, let's pay our obeisances to Prabhuji. Madhavananda Prabhu ki jai.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam to all.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So
he's still there. He's still there. Oh.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all, dear devotees, for joining, and thanks to Prabhuji for such a wonderful class. We'll end the meeting here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.